Hi, I'm Steve from Nearly Wild, and today I'm here with...
I'm Martin Cope, and I set up, run and own a business called Cope Community, which takes my last name. It's been up and running for about 12-ish years, and it's a company that I wanted to run off my own profession. I'm an arts therapist by trade and has worked with largely in the residential care field for looked after children.
Right.
And so I'm a drama therapist, which is HCPC registered therapy. And I set the business up, really, my partner at the time thought it was the most ridiculous strapline ever, because I had about 20 words and it said, it was called Hiraeth at the time, and it was called Hiraeth Services, where psychology, therapy, ecology, ethology, and at the very end it went, unite.
Right.
And so the concept was a holistic understanding of health and well-being and how we needed to have an attachment to all sorts of things, not just our primary carer, in order to make us whole and well and developed and social and creative and so forth. But that strapline wasn't going to cut it. And I also couldn't make the business work.
Right.
Because I wanted largely, I'd bought a woodland at the same time, which was a plantation, a Sitka spruce plantation, that I'm slowly biodiversifying. And I wanted human development to echo ecological development at the time. But just fresh into setting up a business, I just couldn't make that work or be sellable. So I had to go off and follow the market.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the market in my profession was psychological assessments, therapy, that kind of thing. And actually even trying to bring in the arts therapies, drama therapy, music therapy, art therapy, dance movement therapy, and increasingly play therapy was hard enough against the cognitive behavioural ones, the ones which were psychotherapy, despite there being over 400 different types of psychotherapy. It was a hard thing to bring on board with that as it was, and so finally, after 12 years, we're going full circle. I always did my own practice outdoors, which is, I know, the focus of this interview, and have took a lot of my work outdoors, so group drama therapy outdoors, using tribes as a theme and things like this, where you couldn't actually speak English. It was just a kind of unwritten rule, and so they grunted their way through social activity and cooperation in creating the basis of survival and creating making their own food, creating their own camp, that kind of thing. So it's gone through people working outdoors, therapists who are on board with us, and myself also, to now where we're really weaving in what I would call living systems principle into the whole business ethos.
Absolutely fascinating. I mean, for people who aren't working in this background, there's a lot of words and complex thinking in there. I think that in behind it, as I understand correctly, it's about basically taking people outdoors, encouraging them to learn more about themselves and how they work with each other in that outdoor environment. Would that summarise it, or would that be too simplistic?
I think it's multi-level.
Great.
Okay. And I think that there are various ways of working outdoors. One is you can do an activity in the outdoors.
Yeah.
And I think it depends on how much the outdoors becomes an integral part of that health intervention. Right. And so by doing an activity, I could do a mandala, an art therapy mandala session with a group of adults outdoors. Now, we would be using the outdoor materials for that, but how integral is the outdoors in that specific intervention? And I think all fits, but it really depends down to one word, and I think the word's intention. And I think what we're playing with is therapy and therapeutic. And I think therapy is when it is the primary intention of that intervention to work to the health and development of the participants. Right. And I think something is therapeutic when it's a secondary benefit of an activity that goes on outdoors. So if you were to do some abseiling outdoors, it would be highly therapeutic. But the main thing is to teach the abseiling or rock climbing, all of that kind of thing. So I make that distinction.
That's very interesting.
Distinction between intention, and then you could go all the way the other way, where actually the outdoors becomes the primary therapeutic facilitator. Mm-hmm. And so an example of this would be equine-assisted psychotherapy or therapeutic horsemanship, whereby the relationship of the participant with the horse is vital. So why can't you have a relationship between someone going on an outdoor woods-based forestry course or therapeutic intervention and their relationship with the trees around them? When you look at The Secret Life of Trees and The Hidden Life of Trees and so forth, how much is that symbiotic, ingrained relationship that we have, which is ancient old, one of the main primary intentions of that therapeutic intervention? So I think that's the multi-level and continuum, and I rather like the latter. And you could even go further and look at the philosophies of people like Tom Brown Jr., who taught people like Ray Mears, and just look at what was the primary principle of that philosophy. It was a living, eating, sleeping, breathing, spiritual philosophy of respect for the outdoors, and the deep symbolism that they saw within that, which led their lives.
That's absolutely fascinating. I mean, you get into the edge. There's been a lot of discussions about. I mean, at a simple level, the role and value of outdoor pursuit and taking people on outdoor pursuits. And I know within the outdoor pursuits industry at the moment, there's a lot of discussion around, well, you can take somebody out and teach them to rock climb, or take somebody out and teach them mountain biking. And yes, you get them outdoors, but it's really using the outdoors as a place to go, or as a gym, or as a facility, as opposed to taking them out and them actually learning something about the outdoors as well as the activity, and then going to the next level that you're describing, where you go out and you're actually saying, well, okay, you've come out, you've enjoyed the outdoors as a facility, you understand something about it as a place, as a system, as a countryside or ecology or whatever, but you also now understand more about the detail of it, maybe some of the plants or the birds and the ecological interactions between them and yourself. So there's a really interesting parallel, or very much ingrained in what you're doing, which is this relationship between the people in that place, and building that awareness into everything we do in outdoor practice.
And I think one of the vehicles to that relationship, which is the key term here, is the role of the facilitators, whoever they be. I like to have a multidisciplinary facilitatory team, and we're working towards that in our retreats and so forth, so that you have clinical management, for want of a better word, by a clinician alongside a woodsman or an outdoor arts individual practitioner, so that they can feed off each other. But what's actually happening, I think, is one of the vehicles is the relationship that, let's just take the outdoor ecologist or woodsman has with the participants on the course. And it goes back to the ancient form of mentoring.
Right.
And the way in which I would argue, and many people are arguing this, that education was based on this, on developing a thirst for learning by not teaching them how to do it, but allowing them to make mistakes in the outdoor. So if you were doing tracking or stalking, you'd learn your mistakes, but you'd learn a thirst for that through your own voyage of creative discovery in doing that. So the relationship I've found between the practitioners and the participants is key, because they are, when done well, top-notch role models.
Right.
Here are some people who are pillars, I would say, of the community. They live, sleep and breathe the woods. That relationship seems to mean something to the participants. They're not going to, dare I say, work in a charity shop. I've got a lot of time for charity shops, but it's something that they can connect with and seems to connect them. It's a bit like when you watch people sit around a fire for the first time and everyone's just kind of just staring at the fire. Something innate
Yes.
is going
Yeah,
into.
yeah, definitely.
So in the psychology environment, you'd call it the intersubjectivity between people. So
Right.
what's going on between this potential space between us in this relationship? You've got the same with that fire. What on earth is going on there to make that person go, hang on a minute, this feels nice, I don't know why. When you found the tree in Llanerfel, I don't know if you've come across the yew tree in Llanerfel, when I look at that tree, I'm like, something is going on in that potential space. So I guess what we're doing is looking at, so there would be a living systems principle of we value and encourage the craft of mentoring done really, really well with top-notch role models in their relationships with the participants, which is then contemporary psychology, because this relationship-based model is how everything in young people services is going, and it's in the attachment and trauma area, and it comes with Dan Hughes and his work in that field. And for example, young people in residential care, rather than looking at their labelling as post-traumatic stress disorder, we're looking much, much more at labelling it developmental trauma, which is a different level of difficulty over a long period of endurance of this, of a traumatic experience, which has marked changes in the brain, and changes the brain's internal working model. And so we have to change the way in which we're parenting. So this relationship-based thing goes back to the science. And so if you've got some hard-to-reach young people coming on your course in the Wildlife Trust, so we've got a partnership now with the Wildlife Trust to look at developing this level of psychologically informed, relationship-based working with environmentalists and the people who come on their course, who might find mental health quite a difficult one to sort of manoeuvre themselves around. So by knowing that you're actually potentially working with a brain that's working slightly differently, you have to be very careful about this and very highly sensitive. We can't just keep going, they've got something wrong with their brains and others haven't. We've all got this level. And so in the residential care field of looked after children, this is proving really, really influential for care staff, because all of a sudden they start to realise that they cannot parent these young people with the boundaries and sanctions, predominantly the boundaries and sanctions that they would parent an ordinary young person. Because what that actually does is it reinforces a negative identity that those young people have built into themselves by moving from place to place to place to place. They blame themselves, because who else are they going to blame? Their parents? Way too hard to internalise. Anything that reinforces that negative internal working model, they'll do. And so we can reinforce it really carefully. So what I guess to summarise, what I like about this is that we can bring contemporary psychological theories, contemporary therapeutically informed interventions into the outdoor work, and we can bring that on the back of what people will invest in at the moment. So the market at the moment is there and growing and getting more and more hard and perhaps even overwhelmed. And so I've found merit in bringing on board ecotherapy projects on the back of clinical therapeutic supervision for care staff for their own self-care, which people will invest in.
Fascinating. So effectively, I mean, there's an awful lot you've just covered in there, but there's something about rewilding ourselves to some extent. There's something about
absolutely, and that being a predominantly health-based why we're doing it. Sorry to interrupt.
Yes, no, absolutely. And then you've got another part of this, which is intrinsically helping people understand that relationship with the natural world and their relationship with their own health. And then there's something about the mental health of the individual and of the group together. You've covered a huge amount there, and I know you've also got a little woodland that you've been doing various activities in. So is it possible to just to give us a bit of a summative of what it is that you do? Because in fact, as I understand it, you bring together practitioners. You do this not just in Powys, you're doing this across the UK at the moment, and bringing people together to help provide a different form of health service,
Yeah.
health provision, sorry, for people with maybe mental health issues or learning issues or whatever. Is that right?
Kind of.
Yes.
It's a bit of a design model at the moment on what we understand, and where we don't understand things, we will defer to others and try to create a best fit intervention plan
Right.
with a wider scope of what makes somebody healthy.
Yes.
I think the true answer to that of what I'm doing is I'm trying to heal myself. And I think life's too short, and I've made this decision myself with my own difficulties through life, most recently, not to invest in those things that I actually truly believe in. I'm sick of following markets, and sick of doing that as in its entirety. But when you've got an aggregation of partners, commissioners, who find you a credible organisation and have invested in you for 8+ years, it's too much to ignore.
Yes, absolutely.
And so what I'm finding is that through word of mouth and through word of recommendation in psychological assessments, social workers and other commissioning bodies come to us to say, we have this problem. It's often a health-related problem. It's often involving young people and families. It's just where we seem to be at. Help.
Yeah.
It often comes with a can you do. It used to be back in the day, can you do anger management?
Right, yes.
So, and the amount of times that anger has actually been pushed down, it's not really, it's a very useful feeling that we should be feeling, but obviously appropriately behaviourally. So it often comes with, can you do 6 sessions of play therapy and heal this person, kind of behind the thing. So we have to be real about it as well. And what you can often do with that then, at that point, is negotiate what can be done. We're getting more and more young people, so of the age 2 years old and up, being
young?
referred for individual therapy.
Right.
And it's not where the industry is at the moment. Individual therapy with a 2-year-old is not where it's at. It's that primary care relationship which needs the therapeutic support, reassurance, those kind of things. So to go back to your question, what we're doing is increasingly bringing in package potentials. And within that, you have the opportunities of investing over a period of time through a pathway of health intervention, and slowly and developmentally, where the team around, whether it's foster carers, adoptive parents, actual biological parents, social workers, the care staff, all of the education, the teachers, the teaching assistants, those people have to be working consistently with young people especially, in order to give them a consistent message and to provide that level of containment to allow them to feel safe enough and have that base level. It's not unlike anything that you would find in survival.
No, but sounds absolutely fascinating. Yes, I was reflecting actually.
Ray Mears would say, what's the first thing if we're stuck in the survival? Well, the first thing is your psychological attitude.
Absolutely.
But it's shelter.
And some of what you're saying relates to some of the training that people like the SAS get, in terms of going into an unknown environment, how do you cope, and all those things. So
these young people are animals. This is the way in which I see it. It's a living principle. We are animals, and our basic primary needs are the same.
Yes.
And so you follow that living principle, and your Maslow's triangle is precisely the same as that. And the higher level things are
we're in a very interesting space, and we probably come towards the end of this interview, because I feel there's going to be a lot more conversations with yourself on this. But I think that we've got a really interesting, it feels to me like you're providing a bit of a nexus for people coming together to, if you effectively provide good provision, to provide a different way of looking at provision for people in these situations, thinking of people as part of an ecological system, which is very much what you're describing, and that almost a bit of rewilding ourselves, but also not just using the outdoors. I think there's something much more strong that you're doing, which is using and encouraging understanding of the outdoors and of the systems that we're part of. So really exciting, really interesting stuff.
I think to add to that, there is a lack of ownership of this, because we cannot own these interventions. We are putting together packages of this and trying to create a nice jigsaw puzzle of health intervention. And within those packages, we support all of our associates are self-employed, running their own private practices. We've supported people to become professional trainers in specialist fields. And I found they choose more to be with Cope community under that proviso than when we're saying you need to do your training in this and this, and try to limit it like that. I like the model. It's expansive. And the people who work on board can be creative, self-autonomous, have self-control. We discuss things together. We create packages together, and I defer to their knowledge all the time.
It's phenomenal. I'm really interesting. I look forward to learning a lot more about this. And for those of you who do want to see more, obviously at the end of the video, on the description, you see a lot more information about what Martin's doing, the websites and the links. And obviously get in touch if you've got queries or things you want to know from him. Absolute wealth of knowledge, as you can see. So I imagine we'll probably be doing some more talks in the future. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Really good to see you.